Comstock Lane, okay. I'm gonna need you to forget my question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's
You come
all right.
back.
Who owns the land? Pardon?
Alden.
Alden's. Now, who is this gentleman who was here before with this, Mr., what's his name?
He's a volunteer member on the Affordable Housing Trust.
He's a volunteer member.
Mr. Cook is sitting over there as well.
Okay, is Mr. Hankin a realtor?
He is,
Does he have any irons in this fire?
to my knowledge.
Okay.
He'd be conflicted, I'm sure.
I beg your pardon?
I think he'd have to be a conflict of interest.
All of your volunteer board members serve under the state ethics commission.
No, I think that's great that people volunteer and so forth and so on. Now you said the town housing authority is requesting this money and this, and so forth? Now, does that mean, say it again?
Affordable Housing Trust.
Yeah,
It's not the
affordable.
housing authority.
Does it have anything to do with the town? It's connected to the town? Yes. Will the town manage these units?
I would say no.
You would say no, would it be private?
Well, that's correct. It's not, it hasn't been determined who's gonna manage it.
Can you give me the idea of the possibilities? Okay.
All we're doing is the access to the land, all that other stuff. There have been some thoughts and ideas of who would be involved in it, but it's nothing that is anywhere close to being determined.
Okay. And one last thing, not meaning to impugn the committee in any way, it seems to me there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. This land was for sale. It was gonna be developed, all of a sudden things are withdrawn, all of a sudden the land is sold, and all of a sudden a housing plan comes up. Does that seem all quite right?
I don't
Is
think
that the way it happened?
I don't know.
I don't think we're aware of it.
What I'm saying is, that land's been for sale and sold before. Nothing has ever been mentioned about housing. Okay? Now the land has been sold. All of a sudden, there's a housing project proposed.
Who's it been sold to?
It was sold to a gentleman who's gonna develop it, that's why they cut down all our pine trees.
Mr. Alden.
Present owner.
Mr. Alden.
Yeah.
All the trees.
All the trees. I don't know.
Well, the only thing I'm trying to say is, it seems somebody back here said it's almost like putting the cart before the horse. Shouldn't they have found out about this before they made the investment in the land and made this request?
The housing trust is where that question should be directed.
Yeah.
All we were asked was, would we fund it for affordable housing? And did it fall within the parameters of the law? That's what we were asked.
Okay.
So those questions are for different groups.
Which questions are those now? That's, I'm
The
not
one
meaning
about-
that in your disrespect.
Where you said that the property was sold, somebody was gonna
Yeah,
develop
okay.
it. So that is really.
That's
not
something
for
else
us.
entirely.
Right.
Okay. I guess that says it there. It just, well, okay. Like I said, I know your job is difficult and so forth, and we're not disputing that. It just seems, it's almost like a rush to judgment, because tonight, once you gentlemen, once you vote tonight, then the next recourse is the town meeting.
Correct.
Which is where it
Where it
belongs.
will or won't
Okay.
get funded,
Say it again?
which is where it will or won't get funded. This is just,
Ours is just a recommendation,
Okay.
and then the town meeting is where everybody will decide.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Sure, come on.
My name is Deborah Herman, I live on North Plain Road. I just have a question about, could you explain the criteria you used in making your decision? I know you mentioned whether it meets the law, but you also said whether or not you'd recommend it. I mean, I'm just not familiar with, the criteria you used in deciding.
Could you respond to this?
Sure. The committee follows a number of different documents to determine what it should fund, what it should recommend for funding. Number one is the community preservation plan, which it writes annually after a public hearing. Holds a public hearing in August of every year and establishes its funding priorities. And if it thinks that an application meets or furthers those purposes, then it would rank higher up on the funding level. If it meets or furthers the purposes of the town's affordable housing needs studies, or the master plan, or if it's an open space project, the open space plan. So, to the extent it meets the needs of the town as established through those public planning documents, then this committee judges them more worthy of its consideration. And those are some of the questions, not all the questions, but those are some of the questions that applicants are expected to answer when they come to this.
But do you consider broader impact on the neighborhood, or is that for town meeting?
Yeah, that's for town meeting, not for
Okay,
this
thank you.
committee. I appreciate your question. Mr. Bailey.
Dan Bailey, 207 North Street, at Susatana. It's north of Division Street for you guys that have never been that far north. Question. Just correct me if I'm wrong on something. Last meeting, you guys approved like $200 and something thousand out of the existing CPA funding to fund a housing study?
14,000 out of existing funds to update the housing needs study.
Update a housing needs study.
Yes.
So what you're admitting is that by doing so, you're saying that you're not quite sure what the needs are of the town for affordable housing.
No, the data just needs to be updated and needs to include other things like short-term rentals and the impacts on the housing stock. So, I think the committee's reliance on previous plans, the previous housing needs study and master plan is solid, but those numbers need to be updated.
Master plan talks also about preserving communities, intact communities, correct? Right? Master plan talks about existing communities and preserving them. So, it's not a giant leap to realize that a development like this is gonna certainly disturb an existing community, existing neighborhood. So when you weigh merits, seems to me you're kind of fighting your own hands here, because you're saying, well, we need affordable housing, but we're gonna possibly destroy a neighborhood and the neighborhood characteristics by doing so.
It is a balancing act for sure, Dan, and I look at it, maybe we need affordable housing. Maybe this site will inject new life and new energy into the neighborhood. But those are questions I think.
That was a little insulting, but.
Horse racing, right, changes, dynamics into the change, there's always change.
Right, change.
The,
You're absolutely right, change. It is change. But the overlying merits and demerits associated with this project are well beyond whether it's just affordable housing. This committee is committed to saying we need affordable housing. Fine, okay, funding it, fine, okay. But at what cost? That's my point. At what cost? And does it really work? Are we asking the right questions by saying we need affordable housing because we need to meet that restaurant that serves a $25 hamburger needs dishwashers? Or is it 30 years ago when we didn't have affordable housing? We didn't need it, why? Is any of that being talked about? I know that might be a little bit beyond this committee, but those are the kind of questions that you really need to start answering. Why is it in the last 30 years it's done this giant circle? A lot of these people have lived here their whole lives, 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Affordable housing was that neighborhood back in 1962. That was affordable housing. What? And people built houses back then. It's a single family house, single story house. Remember that. Think about that, Jeremy, when it comes to the planning board. How many single story houses you can fit on a 7-acre lot? Think about that.
And with no cellar.
And a lot of them do not have basements either. So just think about the neighborhood, okay? And why is it that now all of a sudden we need this affordable housing? What has changed? And what are we doing to make sure that we're not just creating a giant cycle? Are we asking the right questions?
Well,
But,
Okay.
Tom, at your finance committee, you talked about the tax rate being a tough nut to crack. And you and I have always agreed with that, it certainly is. Absolutely.
We struggle, for sure.
And it is. But a project like this is gonna add more stress to that budget. Absolutely is. It's, you don't have to be a developer to realize that you do need to bring infrastructure. School budget. At the cost of the town. Exactly, if you do bring more kids into the town, that ups our liability to the school, so it's increasing our taxes, okay? And they're not quite sure about it, but I'm quite certain that a lot of these people are gonna have to hook up the sewer, okay? And that's a $4,000, no, okay?
I have a sewer connection on Maplewood Avenue. The people next to me have a septic tank, so why didn't they have to hook up to a sewer if they live next to me?
Because at this point, as far as I know, it's because their grandfather did. But when you bring a new utility in, this is my understanding, when you bring a new utility in, if the public utility is supplied, then you are required for hooking.
We don't wanna engage in the debate, we just.
But again, it's just, this committee, I think, has to start thinking about bigger questions. I appreciate the CPA, I sat here for you. I appreciate what you guys do, honestly, and I know it isn't easy to pick what you should fund. But when you're thinking of merits about projects, you need to think outside the box, you really do. You need to start to think about how this project is gonna butterfly affect everything else. And it really does, and certainly in my opinion, and I'm guessing, not speaking for everybody in this room, that they all agree that this is a negative project, okay? You certainly might be.
I got that sense.
You might be satisfying the housing, the lack of affordable housing in Great Barrington, at least for a moment, but you're creating much bigger problems. You could very well be forcing a lot of these people out of their homes that they've lived in for 60 years because of it.
I'll second that.
And that's something that you really should start to consider. It's, anyway, that's my point.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello, I'm Emma James, 391. So our property was originally attached to the property. We weren't able to afford it with the land. It ended up going back up on the market at a more affordable price with just our 1 acre. So for us, we're looking at losing all of our privacy lines to that land. If there's 2-story buildings going up, we're looking at any kind of visibility just being clear. I mean, there are windows to my sister's bedroom that we're gonna have to curtain, and we're gonna have to put a fence up because we have dogs. So these are small concerns. On a wider scale, I'm looking at the splash effect. I mean, we don't even have sidewalks from North Plain Road leading into town. We don't even have a shoulder on some of that road. I walk to work, I work at a local business that it's already scary enough walking on those roads. I mean, people have to walk down the center of the road so that they'll be seen. So, I know that it's not your place, I know it's Town Hall place, but I'm just wondering how, when you're looking at the viability of a project, or the viability of funding and passing it, I'm wondering how it even is a question when you're talking about things like sidewalks, when you're talking about things like septic and sewer, and all these really nitty-gritty issues that we don't even have a foundation for. I mean, we don't have anywhere, and there are gonna be kids living in these houses, and we're on my siblings, they love this neighborhood, but I was terrified when they were growing up about the fact, I mean, we have drag racers on that road, and it's not a safe area to be, not only, and then the only access is gonna be onto the road. We're gonna have construction happening there, how are people gonna use the road? It's gonna be congested, so yeah, it'll inject life into one intersection that everyone has to pass through to get anywhere. It seems like this is the place to say no, because it doesn't make sense until we have a foundation for anything to go on that property, let alone affordable housing units and multiple families with kids in them who are going to the school district, who are having to cross these roads at an inopportune place in a community that already doesn't have enough foundation for the people living there. So my question is, how is this not the place to say no to funding a project like that?
Well, that's a good question. The Community Preservation Act law that we adhere to has three categories that we could recommend funding for. Historic preservation, open space and recreation, and affordable housing. The application submitted to us fit the criteria for affordable housing.
Yep.
So that's why we voted to recommend it to town meeting. And it's good that you get all your questions and concerns in, because they'll be in the minutes now for future reference. So when you attend town meeting, you know, bring those same questions forward to the wider audience. So then all the voters can decide.
But this seems like the place where Housatonic can raise their issues, as opposed to the entire town of Great Barrington and all of our neighbors being in one room. I mean, I've been to town meetings, it's a zoo. There's no way to get a voice in or word in edgewise. It is, I mean, when you have big issues like this, how is one person, let alone a small community, supposed to stand up with issues like this when they're just being bulldozed in a crowd of other people with their own opinions and their own voices? I mean, this is, like, these are the kinds of meetings that we have, these are the kinds of conversations we have in our town about these issues every day. This is the setting where we can bring it forward.
Yeah, and also, well, Chris is gonna speak in a minute, but also, whether it gets approved, if it gets approved at town meeting, then you have these other smaller meetings with all the permitting authorities, where you can come again and explain to them your concerns. But let Chris, talk to that.
There's a number of different categories for the affordable housing projects that are proposed to this committee. One is acquisition of land or acquisition of housing to make it permanently affordable. One is to actually build new housing. One is to support affordable housing, which is what we do with like an affordable housing needs study. And I feel like I'm missing one. But the application that was voted on tonight, that was submitted by the Housing Trust, was like the very first level of just trying to acquire land for affordable housing. And they included, because this committee said, what do you think you would build there? Trying to understand, would a CPA investment be worthwhile? How much could you build there? Show us some concepts that you thought this through a little bit. And they presented a concept to the committee. In point of fact, if they acquire the land for affordable housing, if they are successful, they could just put one house there. They don't need to put 10 or 20 or 30. They could just put one and they would meet the law, the CPA law.
But
This committee and town meeting might not want to fund it for that much money just for one house. But the point I'm trying to make is this committee doesn't know, and it's very, very premature to know what the development proposal will be. And when if the Housing Trust moves forward, and when they choose a developer to work with them, that developer would have to figure out what other funding it can get from grants, from the state, etc., from private sources, from its own equity. And then that developer would have to come to the community directly, not to town meeting, but to the community directly for maybe subdivision special permit hearings or the actual development special permit. And at that time, you would know where roads were, what other infrastructure would have to be added, what the units would look like, how short or how tall they would be, where they would be situated, what they would be made out of, what color they would be. But that doesn't happen until the land is acquired. And so, while we appreciate the questions and I'm certainly writing them down, none of those details are absolutely known yet. And I think what this committee is hearing is if there are future proposals for funds, for CPA funds to actually build units there, then this committee would want to know that the neighborhood is fully in support of the type, color, the number of units, and the location.
aware,
And-
because
Yes?
this information was not
Right.
disseminated to anyone.
And at that point, at the development stage, we're at maybe a pre-development stage, if you will. At the development stage, all of that would require a lot of, public input at that time.
So then can you pretty much guarantee that we will be informed either by mail, by whatever means necessary, when these details are being ironed out, where we can be, when we can be there, and where our input will be valued?
Yes, the butters will be notified of those meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another thing, one other thing is that the people who will have the details about what their thoughts are, if and when it's passed by town meeting, is the housing trust. Those are the people who questions need to be asked. That's where those issues will be settled, and any of the partners that they want to involve within their process. That's where those issues will be settled.
Anybody else?
Yes, please. My name is Barbara Bailey. I know everybody has heard from my two sons tonight, but I'd like to put my 2 cents in about this. And I hope I heard wrong, Mr. Gordon, about you saying that this project might breathe new life into the neighborhood. I hope I heard wrong.
No, I said it.
Because I have the best neighborhood in the whole town. Right now, my husband is ill, and I know that in a minute, a second, that if there's anything I need or he needs, all I have to do is call any of my neighbors and they would be here. I can't say that about the rest of the town. So, this whole project just scares me that it's gonna take the whole integrity of my neighborhood away. Thank you.
Okay, if I still here?
Sure, sure.
Okay, pardon my voice. I live on 4 Linda Lane. My name's Al Soto. We're directly across from the property. In brief, I'd like to thank that young lady. I understand what she's going through with the Baileys. We're all neighbors there. Number one, if I may, that property was purchased by the Aldens several years back, which I know very personally. They lost out on a few sales because their idea at that point was creating multiple housing with cul-de-sac. They ran into many opposition, much opposition with that, including said neighbors on it. We live in a community. Have you walked that property? Has anyone on the community walked that property? You realize it's landlocked, correct? Okay. Everyone in that area, we're all great neighbors here. We love the serenity of that area. It's peaceful. With 41 gaining its activity over the past 22 years that I've been there. I and my wife of 50 plus years, who's been there, have noticed a dramatic change in motor traffic coming down 41. But yet our community, Linda, Comstack, Wyandotte, and that section of North Plain and a good part of Housatonic is peaceful. You go to bed at night, your ears ring. That's how peaceful it is. We're gonna give that up. We're all aware of that. If everyone in this room is familiar with Pinewood Complex up in Stockbridge, that's what you'll see. Give this project the okay to go, and in 5 years, a lot of us won't be here anymore. We're gonna lose it. Gonna lose it. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I would like to see this committee, which recommends what to the town, what they should and shouldn't do, and of course, that final vote is at the town. Get our view to them, which I'm sure most of us will be there at that meeting to put out further objection to how we feel about this. If I may ask a quick question, what happened to the property on Bridge Street? the old log cabin place, why wasn't that selected for a place to put affordable housing?
It is, it's under development now.
It is, so we're looking for a second site, is that what it is?
I'm sorry,
We're looking for a second site
for housing?
for affordable housing.
Correct, and we have another project, 910 South Main Street under development. So we have several, two actually in development and this one under consideration. So,
Yeah, Bridge Street doesn't have as many neighbors as we have between Wyandotte, Comstock, and Linda Lane. Our neighbors, they're all close. Our homes are not spread that far apart. But yet everyone from our house, which is the first on Linda Lane, to the very last one on Comstock, all have a wonderful privacy factor with their homes. Down at the end of our road, we have several really great people that live down there. Mr. Averdale is one, and several others. The views are terrific. The tranquility, you could walk those roads at any hour of the day, and you've done it when you walked that property. Did you notice anything? I mean, outside of the ordinary, when you come out of this town, and you get up into Housatonic, you get a sense of tranquility. Why? Because that is there in that area. That is such a big, peaceful entity within our community, that when people set out in the spring and summer, you don't have to listen to Bill Rogers working on his Corvette at 9:30 at night, or, you know, let's face it, you know, it's a tight community, it's a peaceful community, and that little 7.25 acre parcel, you wanna do something really nice with that, turn that into a botanical garden. There you go. Put some flowers and beautiful trees in there, and everybody in this room will glow,
thank you,
guaranteed.
appreciate it.
I'm Sarah Binger James. I live at 391 North Plain Road, and again, my mother's property, which we live in, was part of that original parcel. The difficulty we have is that our yard is part of that parcel. The natural barriers of our yard, goes into the parcel, and we've made offer after offer, trying to reason with Dan Alden on behalf of his parents, so that we can actually have the natural, we don't want much more land if we can't afford more land, but with just enough so that the natural boundaries of our property would actually be our property. The property finally has come down in price to where it's, more affordable for some of us, but unfortunately I can't afford to burden my mother with the taxes of owning land just for land's sake, and I'm not organized enough to go door to door and ask all of you all to say, hey, let's put in $10,000 apiece and have shared open space. And I don't think any of us can afford even, $50 more tax liability. So, my concern really is, in addition to all the things my daughter said in terms of the infrastructure isn't there to really support, pedestrian traffic and out of traffic. The other issue is that when the initial subdivision was put forth, I can hold it up, when this original thing that the Aldens had put forth to get the, 12 or 13 housing units in there, we were never informed as an abutter.
I don't think I'm sorry to interrupt, I don't think it ever even got to the.
Well, but at least when it was at the planning board stage, I only heard about it through Helen Mulaney, who said, hey, do you know that they've got a proposal in, and that got us involved to go, So I'm concerned that things could get a little bit far. So on the one hand, I am glad that the town is really gonna be involved in owning it, because, when it was just Dan and Sandra and Dale, who are, great people, I really have a lot of respect for them as owners, that, we get notified in a more timely fashion, because even when that proposal went through, we weren't told that that was even an issue. I just happened to hear through the word of mouth, that's all. So I would like more information ahead of time, and I can't get to downtown and to look at town hall, so at least if agendas could be posted on the website,
You know, I know we have a new alert system, but like the agendas for the committee, today's meeting isn't up there yet, ahead of time.
Yeah.
And the website, it isn't.
Yeah, that's what I got. I printed it right off.
Where, because I keep going and I keep getting like the minutes for the your December 5th meeting, but the one for today, the agenda wasn't there. Like,
Next time, yeah.
so, I just would like to have more access to that's all.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Good job.
I'm Tina Sweet, I live at 372 North Plain. We just found out about this from a neighborhood person, yesterday. And I'm curious, the for sale sign is still up, is it still for sale? So, nothing's a done deal as far as it being acquired for this purpose. So anyone can come in and purchase it, if we all were rich.
It's under contract.
Okay, it's under contract.
It is under contract?
It's under contract to the trust, to the housing trust,
So
To
is
to
it
this group?
still,
To this group?
to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Oh, I got you.
so is it out of realm of anyone else being able to submit a bid on it? Is that,
It's, a contract is contingent on many factors, so you may have to talk to the sellers about
Yeah.
that.
and, that's not a question. Alright, after that, so, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, you can come back. if-
Okay.
We're here for a while, I
Sorry,
think.
sorry.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Questions for us? Sure.
I just, a couple
Yeah.
questions. On the procedure, my name is Joe Abbott. I live on Meadow Lane. It appears the committee today looked at, does this fit the framework of going to town meeting, this parcel and this whole thought process? Did this group bring it up, or did someone come to this group with this area saying, hey, let's look at this? Or was it your volunteer people that spoke earlier? How did this group come up with this, come at this focus?
The Affordable Housing Trust Committee submitted the application.
And the Affordable Housing Committee is who?
Bill Cook.
It's
A town
it's a
committee.
town.
It's a town body?
Yeah.
It's a town body,
Okay.
yeah.
So that this town body, those are the gentlemen you kept referring to as volunteers?
Right.
Okay, so this town body searched out this parcel and said, hey, let's consider this one to you guys, and you guys say, if it's a framework for some funding, let's process it. And that's pretty much the extent. So now we're hearing that it has a purchase and sale or a contract for purchase and sale, tentative, pending probably some conditions.
Pending they get funding at town meeting.
Okay,
If they don't, then
right, we don't, is that public information? Is that purchase and sale public information of that contract?
Yes,
It is, okay, okay.
yes.
So, if this goes forward, the town, through that other entity, has a purchase and sale agreement in place that any developer can then submit of RFP for. Kind of like you tried to do with like was trying to be done with the Who's the Next School. You know, you submitted an RFP, okay, all right. My question was, basically trying to figure out is who that other group was. And a purchase and sale, who held the purchase and sale? Was it a developer that grabbed the purchase and sale and came to you and said, hey, let's try to do this?
No, it was the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Okay.
Yep.
I guess, just to make sure it's clean and transparent and not some behind the scenes approach. Thank you.
okay, you're welcome. Sir, Matt?
Hi all, my name is Dave Smith and my wife Sharon back there. My biggest concern is, we just bought a property back on November 15th in that neighborhood, and I grew up in Housatonic, but we just bought this property and I had no clue this was going on. My concern is, where is my property value gonna go?
Right.
Okay, I just bought this property and I spent every damn nickel I have to buy it. Got lucky to buy it. But is there any, can you tell me where the property value is gonna go in that neighborhood on houses if this gets approved?
I cannot.
Your taxes are gonna go up.
I'm thinking my property value is gonna go down, so
Oh,
my
absolutely.
taxes will go down, but,
They could.
you know, but. I'm not. We just moved back to Housatonic. I grew up in Housatonic. I was on the fire department 15 years ago. I grew up there, so I'm familiar with the town. I don't know many of you, but I'm really happy to be back. But I just want you all to know I'm a little scared about what we just invested in. So I think you need to research that. I'd appreciate it. That's my concern.
Thank you.
It sounds like. Are you coming in, just let us know who you are? Yep.
James Schumacher, 372 North Plain Road. And from what I'm hearing, it just sounds like this was a bit cart before the horse, even though it's a town body that asked or submitted this. It sounds like they should have first put it out to the people of Housatonic, because that's where the impact will be. So that should be, part of the committee process. I would think that they would approach the people first about these ideas before they went ahead with anything. That's about it.
Anyone else?
Yes, quick question, Laura Dupont, Comstock Lane. So,
I'm sorry.
Laura Dupont, Comstock Lane. So now you guys are done, this committee's done with your approval on this particular property. So can you explain to us, Mr. What happens next, and what next meeting should we attend so that we know?
The next meeting is town meeting, because that's where I actually be decided whether or not it gets funded.
The town meeting in May?
Correct.
The annual town meeting in May, this will be on?
The town warrant.
Okay.
All the applicants, if needed, they'll make a presentation about what they think are the merits of their project. And then the moderator will call the vote. And then the vote will determine whether or not it receives funding.
Okay, so if we want to speak and oppose the actual project, that would be the next place for us to attend and go to that. So nothing else is going to happen between today and May regarding this
I
project?
don't know. I mean, I don't know if the Affordable Housing Trust is gonna have, any community meetings. I mean, I only can tell you what our committee is doing.
Okay, so how as a butters would we know if something else is going to happen between now and May?
All the meetings are posted on the town website,
Uh-huh.
and all the committee members are listed. You can email them with questions.
And that would be the Affordable Housing Trust?
Yes.
That's the
That's the
meetings we
next
should be keeping
step.
an eye
That's where
on.
you need to direct these questions.
And those are the meetings between now and May that we should be looking at on the agendas
Correct.
of whether this will be on their agenda.
Not only will they be meeting for whatever reason,
Yeah.
I believe, and if they don't, to do outreach to the community to start to answer your questions. And I would suggest that what you may wanna do as a group is get your questions all on a sheet and say, you know what? Don't go shooting at it, but get the sheet and say, these are this is what we wanna know. How are we gonna have to put in more sewers? What are you gonna do about the roadways? Who's gonna get penalized? And ask those questions. They're all fair, but that is the group that has the answers. We are a very small segment, and we've entertained, listened to you, and we understand it. Chris has all the questions, but if I were you, I would get them all in one spot and get 2 or 3 people and go to the Housing Trust and say, we want answers to these questions as the neighborhood. And I think it's fair, and I think it's just.
And we can go to them at any time, at any of their scheduled meetings with these.
That's not my discussion, but there's always citizen speak, and you can always approach the chair and say, I have an agenda item. I have something we would like to discuss with you, and I'm representing, or I'm whatever.
All meetings are public. Mr. James Bailey.
Yes, sir. First of all, I'm gonna explain to each and every one of you, I'm very disappointed. You had a greater responsibility than you're playing it off to be. You claim we're just a very small step. First of all, you're the first step that could have ended it all. Now I have a question, and I hope somebody can answer it honestly. When these three guys, who were they again?
You mean the Affordable Housing Trust
Okay.
Committee?
They came to you requesting money, right? Asking for money for this project. At that point, had they already taken public funds and secured that property? Had they signed the purchase sale agreement? Well, my question to you then is, if it seems kind of ignorant for you people in your position to have awarded money to them, not even knowing if that property was available to them. So were you aware that there was money or a purchase sale agreement prior to this?
Yes, this committee is aware there's a purchase and sale contract, yes.
When were you first made aware of that?
Oh, yeah.
2 months ago was
2 months ago. So 2 months ago, you were made aware that there had already been public funds set aside. Wait, a purchase sale agreement 2 months ago was public. Is that correct? I'm just trying to, I just can't understand how you can say we just have a small part in it, right? We just had a small part in deciding it. You had too many factors to decide when you said you had a small part in it. Because first of all, you weren't even sure if that property was available, correct? Unless, of course, each and every one of you knew that there was already a purchase sale agreement available. Is that correct?
I'm not even sure I understand your question.
My question, is everybody on this board aware 2 months ago that there was a purchase sale agreement with that property?
Yes, it was part of step one.
And that it
So
was in
step-
effect, wait a minute, excuse me, that it was in effect until the town meeting in May. That it extended through there. They had a purchase and sale that went through May, the May town meeting.
So,
When they would be given, the money would be funded at town meeting, or not.
okay, I don't do real estate, so a percentage of that money could have been lost had they not, or still can be lost through this purchase sale agreement? How's that work? It's a
You don't know if
contract.
there's any money exchanged.
If there was a deposit, it's possible, you'd have to look at the P&S, then the deposit could be lost depending on what the
And
contingencies
though, so,
But that's, if you'd like to discuss the details of the purchase and sale, the trustees, the housing trustees could discuss.
That's, we would know that.
but
But it
this
is-
board
it is a
was
public-
aware that there was a purchase
Yes,
sale
and it is a
agreement?
public document.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, there was money at stake before they came to see you asking for money. There was already money at stake, correct?
There was a deposit put down, thankfully, of $1,750.
So there was money at stake already, which I don't do real estate. There's a possibility that money can be lost if this doesn't pass at town meeting, correct?
I don't do real estate either technically, but yes, that could be lost.
Do you think this purchase sale agreement in hand weighed on this board today? Their decision to hand them money?
On this board?
Yeah.
Not at all.
Well, it had to be in effect for us
So
to bring it to town meeting.
everything I've listened to tonight was, we do it based on letter of the law, right? We have criteria. Is not considering the community criteria when, in making your decision?
I think we did, because we believe, as the town believes, that there's a need for affordable housing in communities. So this application is, is trying to address some of the shortfall in housing. So we work within those parameters now.
Is there, I'm just curious, is there an actual list of people waiting for houses in the town? There actually is? How long?
850 people
850 people
for affordable housing.
for affordable housing.
Now, if you look out in this room, how many of these men and women out here do you believe to be millionaires? This, as somebody pointed out, was affordable housing and is affordable housing. These are the working class that you're trying to support. Is that what you're up here doing, right? You're charged with trying to help a community.
Correct.
It seems detrimental as to what you just did to a community of working class people.
We haven't done anything other than recommend. Anyone else?
Wait, just one further
Okay.
question.
Sure.
How many of you, with a show of hands, are from Housatonic? No? The board? Mr. Mercer? He doesn't live in Housatonic anymore. All right, thank you.
Any committee updates? No. Motion to adjourn.
Yes.